Hey all, it's Julianne, your productivity coach. I'm here to talk about completing a purchase and sale agreement. So you've been showing your buyer and you finally found the property to put an offer in on. There are several documents that you need to gather together and complete in order to send over an offer, okay? The first one is a purchase and sale agreement. So we're gonna review this document today. Next are your loan exhibit, and it's going to be one of several, and I'll show you how to fill those out in another video. So you need your purchase and sale agreement, you need your money, which is your loan agreement, okay? If the house is older than 1978, you need your lead-based paint exhibit. If the house has seller's disclosures, you need a copy of those, as well as the community association disclosure if it's in an HOA. If it is a townhouse, a condo, you need the resale for the condo form. So there's several documents together that are included in a purchase and sale or a contract or an offer. If your individuals have a house to sell and they need to sell in order to buy, you'll need the buyer's contingency on the sale of their property. So we've got several things, moving parts here. We're going to focus today on the purchase and sale agreement. So here is a copy of the purchase and sale agreement. And we're going to start at the top. You are putting your offer date, which is the day it's submitted, okay? Next, you're going to put the full address in, including your county and your zip code. You're going to add an MLS number. It could be either the Georgia MLS number or the FMLS number, but you need the MLS number. If it's not listed on either MLS, you will, of course, put maybe NA here, okay? Tax parcel ID number. Now, this may be listed on the listing. Most often it is on the listing. You're going to want to check it out on Realist tax to make sure that that information is correct. So you're going to get the tax ID information, okay? Next, legal description. Now, if the listing agent has done their job, they will have given you the full legal description off the warranty deed. And they could either have it as an attachment for you so that you can attach it as a document, or they may have it filled out in the FMLS in the legal section, and then you would use this one instead and you would fill in all of the information. If they haven't done their homework and done that, you can look up this information in the county records. It is the clerk of court's records. You'll have to do a search by property. Some counties are easier than others to search for, and you can pull the information on the warranty deed and get it that way. So you have one of three choices for a townhouse or a single family detached. Either it's an exhibit, it is just the deed book and page, which is probably the weakest one, or it is the full description written out, okay? Number two is used, as you can see here, only for condominiums. And if you're using a condominium, you also need to have the condominium resale, purchase, and sale exhibit, okay? So we'll assume that we have an exhibit to fill in right here. Next, you're going to put in your purchase price. That's the price that the buyer wants to buy the house for. The seller contribution by the closing costs, number 3. Buyer's closing costs are the buyer's responsibility, but many times the buyers will ask the sellers to contribute to part, if not all, of the closing costs. It's a negotiable item. So depending on the loan type is how much you can ask. For example, on a conventional loan, you can ask no more than 3% of the sales price for the seller to contribute. FHA can be up to 6%. So you need to know those numbers and then talk with your buyer. It also depends on the market. The market right now is really, really hot, and a lot of people are either choosing to not ask for closing costs or they're rolling them into the sales price. For example, this one here, you might be able to add some money in that would allow you to have some closing costs, and it won't be out of the pocket of the seller, but it's rolled in, so it's also not out of the buyer's pocket per se, although it's rolled into the sales price. So you can do several different things, but know that this is a negotiable item. Your closing date, you're going to choose a date. You cannot say to be determined. You need to pick a day. You can say on or before, but know that the date that you put in here, everybody's going to shoot for. So talk with the lender and make sure that your lender can meet the date that you're putting on there. Otherwise, it's going to cause problems later on. Okay? You're going to have the closing possession either at close or so many days after closing. And if you have it after closing, you'll also need to attach the temporary occupancy agreement, because that means the seller is staying in place. Okay? Typically, what we do is at close. Your earnest money. That money is held in escrow, and that is held by some other party other than the buyer or the seller. It is like a down payment, and the amount is at least 1%. I typically don't do more than that or less than that, because you need to show that you're really committed to moving forward on this property. Okay? Now, if we prefer, as a brokerage, we prefer to hold the earnest money, and the buyer's agency, the buyer's brokerage usually holds earnest money. And if so, you would put Keller Williams Atlanta North in here. Okay? If it's going to be an attorney, which we don't suggest because they're not a party to the contract, but if you're choosing for the attorney to hold the closing costs, you will also need to include in the contract F510 and F511, which gives permission for the attorney to hold the money, and the attorney agreeing that they will hold the money. Okay? Your closing law firm is listed here. If there are several locations, I suggest that you put the location. For example, Thomas & Brown East Cobb, Thomas & Brown Buckhead, so people know the location of where you're going to meet. What makes the most sense is to close near the house. Okay? And here's why. The last day, the day of closing, you are going to want to do a final walkthrough on that property. If you're closing in Buckhead and your house is in Decula, and you have to drive to Decula and then go down to Buckhead, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So you definitely want to keep it closer, because it just makes it easier for everybody. If you don't know of an attorney in that area, and it doesn't matter who you close with, you may want to ask the listing agent, if they have a preference. Okay? All right, earnest money. For us, it's going to be paid by a check, and you're going to put in here either they've got a check already written, so you're going to use A in the amount, or B, which we typically do nowadays, and that is within 3 to 5 days of binding agreement. Now, what you would do here is type in the amount, let's say $3,000. Now, if you have two choices, pardon me, either they can send in a check, a personal check made out to Keller Williams Atlanta North, or they can send an ACH. We now have that option. If they're going to send an ACH, then you need to put $3,000 as an ACH here in this description. And then check with Melissa, our MCA, and she can give you the directions of how to create a profile so that they can send that money in. Okay? All right. Next, we have our inspection and due diligence period. Property is sold with a due diligence period. Typically, in a really crazy market, it's between 7 and 10 days. When it's a little bit slower, or when it's super fast and there aren't a lot of inspectors available, sometimes you might put 14 days. But in this market where there's so much competition in multiple offer situations, having a long due diligence period is not a good idea. You want it as short as possible, but an opportunity for your people to do all their inspections and then negotiate on the repairs that need to be done. 7 to 10 is usually good. Make sure that you attend or watch one of the sessions where we did on multiple offers and backup offers. And we've got some suggestions on how to clean things up and to make them even more streamlined, okay? Now, number 2 was put in here several years ago, and I really don't know many people that use it. And it's just additional option money for the seller to get. It might be used in a multiple offer situation with the buyer was really serious about the house, but I will tell you that I've never used it before. And typically what we're going to put here is 0 and NA days in the number of days, okay? Lead-based paint, you are going to check a box. It either was or was not built prior to 1978. And if it was built before 1978, you will need F316, that lead-based paint exhibit, okay? Now, over here, your job is to fill this out as completely as possible and make this as attractive to the other agent, which means you're going to fill in as much information as you can. So you've got Keller Williams Atlanta North. You're going to list the broker, whoever that might be. Let's just say it's EXP, for example, okay? Now, you have an exclusive buyer brokerage agreement. The fact that they have the listing in an MLS, we're going to assume that they are also representing the seller as a client, okay? The only reason that you would use number 4 is if both the listing and the buyer, so let's say, for example, that the listing was one of our amazing agents in our office, and it was listed by Keller Williams Atlanta North. Can't spell. Okay, and because it's Keller Williams Atlanta North, instead of this one, I would check this one. Then I would put as the listing agent their name. Let's say it's Paige Morgan, okay, and my name here. So that because we're both with the same brokerage, we need to designate who's representing whom, and that becomes like a China wall here, okay? All right. Relationships, we have to mention material relationships disclosed by either brokerage. So if you are related by marriage to the buyer, you want to put that in there, okay? Time limit, make sure that you put a time limit on your offers. If you leave that blank, it's available in perpetuity. So they could come back to you at any time, and you want to create a sense of urgency for them to respond. So you want to give them at least, usually I give them 24 hours. If it's a brand new listing, I'm probably going to give them 48 because I know it's new and they're going to want to hit the market right away and test the market, the waters to see what else is there, okay? All right. Page 2, 3, all of this describes in detail page 1. Please read your contract so that you know what you're filling out. I can't reiterate that enough. It's important to know what's in there, okay? Now, we need to check what exhibits we're going to include in this offer. So this one is going to be, we'll say this one is a conventional loan, so I'm going to choose that as A. To me, I always put these in order of importance. And the money always is the first thing right after the contract is the money. So we're going to put the contingency loan. Let's say that there is lead-based paint or that it's older. So we would put that as B. They do have a house that they're going to sell. So that would be C. And there's a seller's disclosure. That would be D. And a community association disclosure. That would be E. So I'm identifying, I'm checking them, and I'm also filling them in order of importance, okay? Now, in here is for your special steps, and this is anything that hasn't been identified. So this is the perfect place for you to put in something like a home warranty. And the way that I typically write that is seller to provide buyer with 1-year home warranty at close, cost not to exceed $580 and shall be ordered by the selling agent, which is me. I'm the selling agent, not the listing agent. Okay, so it gives me permission to choose the company. And so I would talk to the buyer and pick the right company that they want. Okay, so there are other steps you could put in here: a termite bond, a septic tank being cleaned out. There might be other things that would be involved. This is where you're going to put those special steps. Now, there is a whole list of special steps that GAR has already written out by lawyers. What we want you to know is it's not a good idea to write your own steps. You're not a lawyer. So we need to make sure that it's very clear and that there's no holes in them. So if there's something specific that you need to write, please talk to myself or our assistant team leader, and we can help you make sure that those special steps are written correctly. Another one might be an escalation clause. So if you're in a multiple offer situation and you want to write an escalation clause, we have those as well that you would put in here, okay? All right. So on the last page is where we're going to fill in the information. Now, we don't know who the seller is. You might want to look it up on the tax information, but I typically don't fill this in yet, okay? I let the selling agent fill that part out. But I do put my buyer's name and their email address. I don't give them all the full information. I give them the minimum because I don't want the listing agent contacting my people, okay? But you do want at least a minimum. Now, here is another matter. You're going to fill in as much information on the listing broker as you can. And the good news is on your MLS sheet, you have all of that information. You have the firm number, you have the agent's name, you have their license number, their phone number, their email address. You don't have their realtor membership or the broker address, although you could look them up by name and you could get that address if you would like. Their MLS code is there, and also their license firm number is there, all right? So all of this is correct. I would need to fill in my estate ID, my license number, my real estate. I'm with Cobb Association and KWEC 01 H62960, all right? Last but not least, the binding agreement date, you leave that alone. The last person to receive this document with all of these things signed by all parties, that's the person that binds it, and that's when the clock starts ticking. So that's how to complete a purchase and sale agreement. Next, we're going to look at how to fill out the different loan exhibits, and we'll do that next.